We live in a world designed to fracture your attention. Everything around you, your phone, the news, the opinions of others, the weight of the future is crafted to scatter your energy. But the truth is, distraction is not your real enemy. Confusion is. When your mind doesn't know what it's truly aiming at, it will chase anything that moves. And that's how we lose days, months, even years chasing shadows. Clarity of purpose is the antidote. When you are crystal clear on your purpose, distractions lose their flavor. They no longer seduce you. You begin to see through the noise, and focus becomes your natural state. You don't have to force it because you're aligned. Like a river flowing downhill, your mind follows its purpose with power and precision. But most people have never truly asked themselves the hard questions. What do I want? Who am I becoming? What am I here to give, to build, to express before I leave this world? These are not questions for a single afternoon. They are the furnace of inner transformation. The ones who burn for their answers are the ones who rise above the fog of mediocrity. If you don't choose your purpose, the world will choose one for you. And it usually comes in the form of chasing approval, chasing money, chasing status, chasing everything but meaning. That's why people feel exhausted, not because they're doing too much, but because they're doing too much of what doesn't matter. Without purpose, your energy leaks in 100 directions, but with purpose, your energy becomes a laser. It cuts through doubt, it slices through distraction, it creates movement, and eventually momentum. And here's something most people miss. Your purpose doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be yours. It has to come from that quiet place inside you that knows what feels alive, what feels true, what you would do even if no one clapped. And when you find that, even in the smallest way, it becomes your compass. You can navigate storms with it. You can walk away from noise with it. You can say no with power and yes with full presence. Some people think focus means trying harder, but real focus begins with clarity. You don't need more energy, you need a cleaner direction. Imagine trying to hit a target in the dark. You can shoot all day, but it's aimless. That's how most people live. But turn on the light, know what matters to you, and suddenly every step you take has intention behind it. When you're clear on your why, you stop looking sideways. You don't need to compare. You don't get distracted by what others are doing, because you're moving from within, not reacting to what's outside. And that internal shift, that's when focus becomes unshakable. That's when you can sit in the middle of chaos and still hear your own voice louder than the world's noise. It's easy to get excited about motivation. It's easy to be inspired for a few days. But clarity creates sustainability. It's not a firework, it's a fire. The kind that burns quietly, but steadily. You don't need hype when you have purpose. You don't need 10 strategies when you have one vision. Because everything else becomes a filter. If it moves you closer to your purpose, it's worth your time. If it doesn't, let it go. This kind of inner clarity isn't taught in schools. It's cultivated. It's earned through self-reflection, through journaling, through solitude, through painful honesty with yourself. It comes when you're tired of living by default, when you've suffered enough confusion that you finally decide to define your life with intention. And that moment, that decision, that's the birth of a focused mind. You won't always have motivation, you won't always have energy, but if you have clarity, you will always know what to do next. That's the power of living with purpose. It removes the noise and reveals the path. You may still have doubts, but you will move anyway. You may still feel fear, but you won't freeze. Because focus is not the absence of fear, it is the presence of purpose. And when that purpose becomes your compass, your focus becomes unshakable, not because you're superhuman, but because you finally stopped being distracted by things that don't belong to your soul. Let the world remain noisy. You have something to build. The world will always try to pull you. That's not a theory, it's a law. The moment you decide to focus, everything outside of you begins to move louder, brighter, more urgently, begging for your attention. The news, social media, people's opinions, your past, your future, all pulling at you like invisible strings. And if you're not deeply rooted, if you're not anchored in your own center, you'll be swept away before you even realize it. But here's the truth. You can't control the noise, and you don't need to. Let the world move. Let it swirl and scream and dance for your attention. You don't have to resist it with tension. You simply have to remain centered. Your strength isn't in fighting the pull, it's in refusing to be moved by it. See, people misunderstand what inner power really is. They think it's about force, grinding, pushing, blocking everything out. But real strength, true mastery, is softer than that. It's the calm eye of the storm, the ability to stand still inside, even while everything outside is chaotic. When you cultivate that inner stillness, the world can try to pull you, but you don't move. And not because you're numb, but because you're aware. Being centered means you know who you are. You've done the quiet work. You've met yourself in solitude. You've looked at your wounds and sat with your truth. You're not running from yourself, so you're not desperate for outside distraction. That's the difference. Most people don't get pulled because they're weak. They get pulled because they haven't rooted themselves deep enough. Imagine a tree with shallow roots. A little wind can shake it. But a tree with roots that run deep into the earth. The storm can scream, the branches can bend, but the core doesn't move. That's who you're becoming. Someone whose roots run inward, not outward. Someone who's no longer defined by every shift in mood, every opinion, every rise and fall of the day. The world will tempt you to chase everything: validation, attention, applause, relevance. And sure, those things can feel good for a moment, but they are fleeting. You'll always need more and more and more, until you're addicted to the chase and disconnected from your own center. But when you're centered, something shifts. You can hear the noise, but you're not owned by it. You can see the distraction, but you don't follow it. You can feel the pressure, but it doesn't break you. You become untouchable, not because the world stopped pulling, but because you stopped reacting. And here's what's wild: the more centered you become, the less you feel the need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove your worth or argue your path. You just live it, quietly, steadily, powerfully. The world can keep spinning, but your axis remains firm. Being centered doesn't mean isolation. It means discernment. You learn to choose your inputs, to protect your energy like a sacred resource. You stop saying yes to things that pull you away from your purpose. You stop pouring into people who only drain. You stop living according to trends and start living according to truth, your truth. And it's not about being perfect, it's about being present. Present enough to recognize when your peace is slipping, when your thoughts are spiraling, when your soul is tired. Present enough to return again and again to that quiet place inside where clarity lives. Because life will keep pulling. Even the things that look good opportunities, people, praise, they can pull you if you're not careful. So don't expect the pull to stop. Just learn how to stand so strong in yourself that no pull is stronger than your purpose. You'll have days when it's harder, days when the noise gets louder, when you doubt, when you feel off balance. That's okay. What matters is that you keep returning, you breathe, you reflect, you remember. You realign. Because in the end, focus isn't about silencing the world, it's about turning down the volume and turning up your presence. And when you do that, when you learn to stay centered no matter what's pulling at you, you become unstoppable. You move with clarity, you live with intention, and in a world that constantly tries to pull you away from yourself, simply staying centered becomes your greatest act of rebellion. If you want to sharpen your focus, you must first get comfortable with silence, not just the absence of noise, but the deep silence that comes when you're not scrolling, not reacting, not trying to fill every space with stimulation. That kind of silence, the still, uncomfortable kind, is where the real training happens. Most people run from it. They fill every second with sound, distraction, or movement, because silence feels too empty, too slow. But in that emptiness, something powerful begins to grow. Clarity, strength, and laser, like focus. The truth is, silence doesn't just reveal what's around you, it reveals what's within you. And for many, that's terrifying. Because once the world gets quiet, all the noise in your mind starts to get louder. Your fears, your doubts, your insecurities, they rise up and demand to be heard. But that's exactly why silence is necessary. Because you can't train your mind to be focused if you've never trained it to be still. You can't master your energy if you don't even know what's going on inside you. We've been conditioned to believe that constant activity equals productivity. That if we're not always moving, responding, achieving, we're falling behind. But real mastery doesn't come from motion, it comes from discipline. And discipline starts in the silent spaces where no one is watching. That's where the mind either breaks or sharpens, and it only sharpens through practice. When you sit in silence, distractions begin to lose their grip. You stop needing every ping, every headline, every little buzz of dopamine. Instead, you start learning to direct your attention deliberately, powerfully. Your focus becomes something you command, not something you lose to the world's chaos. You stop reacting and start choosing. And the more you practice this, the more dangerous you become, not in a violent way, but in a way that unnerves the noise, because a focused person in a distracted world is a revolutionary. People often ask, how do I get more focused? And the answer is rarely what they want to hear, because the answer isn't a hack or an app or a playlist. It's silence. It's sitting with yourself until your thoughts stop racing and your breath deepens. It's returning again and again to the discipline of stillness, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels pointless. Because it's not pointless, it's sharpening the blade of your mind. And here's what happens next. When you build that kind of inner stillness, everything outside gets clearer. You start seeing what matters and what's noise. You stop chasing things just because they're urgent, and you start pursuing things because they're true. Your priorities become clean, your energy more potent, your actions more intentional. That's not just focus, that's power. Quiet, calm, grounded power. We live in a time where everyone's talking, everyone's sharing, everyone's trying to be heard. But very few people are actually listening to themselves, to their intuition, to the deeper rhythm of life. Silence reconnects you to that rhythm. It's not about isolation or withdrawal. It's about preparation. Just like a warrior trains in the quiet before battle, you train your mind in silence so you can be fierce in the noise. And the best part, no one can see you doing this. It's invisible, but the results, they show up everywhere, in how you speak slower, more deliberate, in how you work deeper, more locked in how you handle pressure steady, unshaken. That's the fruit of silence. It's not loud. It doesn't brag, but it builds something inside you that the world can't touch. Don't be afraid to be alone with your thoughts. Don't be afraid to close the door, shut off the world, and sit in that strange, quiet space where there's nothing to prove. Because that space is your training ground. That's where focus is born, not in the chaos, in the calm, not in the applause, in the solitude. Let the silence shape you. Let it strip away the distractions, the ego, the unnecessary. What's left, that quiet center, is where your real focus lives. Train there, return there, protect that space like it's sacred, because it is. People often speak about focus like it's some magical moment of inspiration, something that arrives when the stars align and the world goes quiet. But focus isn't magic. It's not even motivation. Focus is built, and what builds it, day by day, hour by hour, is discipline. Discipline is the daily armor of the focused. Without it, even the sharpest mind is vulnerable to the distractions of the world. With it, even the most chaotic environment can't shake your direction. Discipline doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It moves quietly, consistently. It's the reason you show up when no one's watching, the reason you keep pushing when the excitement has worn off, and the reason you say no to temptations that look good now but will cost you later. Discipline is what protects your focus from being stolen by every shiny object, every scrolling screen, every dopamine hit disguised as opportunity. Think about this. Everyone has goals, but only a few build the structure to get there. Why? Because it's hard. It requires repetition, monotony, and delayed gratification. And we live in a world that celebrates spontaneity and quick wins. But the focused mind plays the long game. It doesn't chase convenience. It honors consistency, because that's what creates power. You can't rely on how you feel. Feelings are weather. They shift with the wind. But discipline, that's the shelter. That's what keeps you aligned with your purpose, even when you're tired, uninspired, or doubting yourself. That's when it matters most. Discipline is forged in those moments when quitting whispers in your ear and you choose to stay, to finish, to sharpen. Let me be clear. Discipline isn't rigidity, it's freedom. Most people think freedom is doing whatever you want, whenever you want. But real freedom is the ability to direct your life with intention. Without discipline, you're at the mercy of your moods. You're pulled by every distraction, every urge, every external voice. But when you train discipline, you gain the strength to ignore the noise and follow your inner compass. That's when life becomes yours again. It begins in the smallest things. Waking up when you said you would. Keeping promises to yourself, turning your phone off for an hour to do deep work, not needing applause to keep going. These little acts, they might look insignificant, but they're training your nervous system, your willpower, and your identity. You start becoming someone you can rely on, and that's powerful. That's when you stop trying to convince the world you're disciplined, and just live it. You'll be tested. Life will throw comfort in your face when you're trying to grow. It'll tempt you with shortcuts when you're building something meaningful, but that's part of the path. Distraction doesn't go away. You just get stronger. You build armor, and that armor isn't built in a day. It's earned brick by brick by choosing your purpose over your preference. People will notice, not because you announce it, but because your energy changes. There's a presence that comes with discipline, a quiet confidence. You become the person who finishes what they start, who doesn't fold under pressure, who carries themselves with clarity and calm even when the world is loud. That's focus, not scattered, not reactive, locked in. This kind of discipline doesn't remove your humanity, it deepens it. You're not becoming a machine, you're becoming someone who knows when to rest, when to work, when to push, and when to reflect. Discipline is what allows you to be fully present with your life instead of constantly pulled away by distractions that promise much but deliver little. So when you wake up tomorrow, don't wait to feel motivated. Don't wait for the perfect conditions. Decide. That's where discipline begins. In a decision repeated until it becomes identity. Focus isn't a gift, it's a result. It's the natural outcome of a disciplined life. You build it the same way you build anything worthwhile, one step at a time with full attention and unwavering commitment. The world will try to pull you in every direction, but if you wear your discipline like armor, you'll walk straight through the noise, untouched. We all live with emotions, raw, wild, beautiful, chaotic, and they are essential. But when it comes to staying focused, to walking your path with unwavering precision, emotional detachment becomes a necessity. Not because emotions are bad, not because you should numb yourself, but because direction requires clarity, and clarity can't exist when you're constantly being pulled by every emotional wave. Imagine trying to navigate a ship through a storm. The wind howls, the waves crash, and if the captain reacts to every gust without anchoring the direction, the ship spins in circles. That's how most people live, triggered, reactive, letting anger, fear, jealousy, or excitement steer the wheel. Emotional detachment isn't about suppressing those feelings. It's about becoming the captain who acknowledges the storm but still knows where the ship is going. When you detach emotionally, you gain space. Space to respond instead of react. Space to see things for what they are, not what they feel like in the moment. Someone criticizes you. Without detachment, you crumble or rage. With detachment, you assess. Is this useful? Does it help me grow? If yes, you use it. If not, you let it go. That's power. We're taught to be emotional about everything. Our goals, our image, our relationships, even our failures. But the truth is, being overly emotional makes your direction fragile. One bad day, one disagreement, one disappointment, and suddenly your mind swerves off course. But when you develop emotional detachment, you become anchored. Your direction doesn't break because your feelings got hurt. You continue, centered and calm. There's a stillness in emotional detachment that sharpens the mind. When the noise inside quiets down, the mind can finally see. You stop arguing with reality. You stop trying to bend people or circumstances to your will. You focus on what you can control, your actions, your decisions, your energy, and you learn to walk away from things that don't serve that path without guilt, without drama. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means discipline. It means choosing your highest priority over your strongest emotional impulse. That's not coldness, that's maturity, that's mental strength. When someone offends you, you don't waste energy on revenge or proving your worth. You move forward. When anxiety creeps in, you don't spiral. You observe it, breathe through it, and get back to work. This is how warriors think. Most people are ruled by emotions and don't even know it. Their day is dictated by how they feel, not by what they've decided. But emotion is not a compass. It's weather. It changes. So if you want to keep your direction, you must detach from the weather. You must stay rooted even when the wind of emotion tries to uproot you. Because your purpose deserves consistency, not chaos. This kind of detachment creates power that feels unshakable. You can be present with people and experiences without becoming dependent on them. You can love deeply without losing yourself. You can fail without falling apart, and when success comes, you don't get drunk on it. You stay focused, grounded, ready for the next step. Think about all the distractions around you: social media, drama, validation, fear of missing out. What are they really? Emotional bait. They hook you because you're emotionally invested in things that don't matter. Detachment allows you to cut the hook. It gives you the strength to say, "Not today. I have work to do. I have a mind to protect. I have a direction to follow." And here's what happens when you become emotionally detached in a focused way. You become magnetic. Your energy shifts. People sense that you're not looking for approval, not controlled by fear, not easily shaken. That calmness, that inner strength, it stands out in a world that's constantly reacting. And suddenly, your silence speaks louder than noise. Your focus becomes contagious. Don't confuse emotional detachment with being disconnected. You're still human, you still feel, but the difference is you don't let those feelings drive the car. You acknowledge them, you respect them, but you stay in control because direction requires control. And the one who holds that control is the one who moves the farthest. In a world full of emotional chaos, learn to be the one who chooses clarity. Let others argue, let others overreact. You stay focused. Stay free, stay in motion. There's something powerful about silence, not the silence of emptiness or avoidance, but the silence of someone so focused, so driven, that they don't feel the need to announce every move. You see, the most focused people in the world aren't the loudest. They don't need to post every step, argue every doubt, or respond to every distraction. They don't walk into a room demanding attention. They enter quietly, and their results do the talking in a world obsessed with noise, likes, comments, validation, approval. Moving in silence has become rare, but that's exactly why it's so effective. When you're silent, you're unpredictable. When you're silent, you're undisturbed. No one knows what you're planning. No one can interrupt your momentum. No one can mock a seed before it's sprouted, because they don't even know it's been planted. The focused mind understands this. The real battle is internal, and real progress is made in the shadows, not in the spotlight. Loud people often overcompensate. They shout because they want to be seen. They post because they want to be praised. But deep down, they're still seeking external permission. The one who is truly focused doesn't need permission. They've already given it to themselves. The silent ones, they're in the lab, they're in the gym. They're on the floor, in the books, at the desk. While others are explaining their goals, they're executing them. While others are debating strategy, they're already making the next move. They don't talk about discipline, they live it. They don't promise, they deliver, not someday, but now, quietly, consistently. And when you move like that, silent but steady, something starts to shift in you. You stop needing applause. You stop seeking proof. You know what you're building, and that knowing becomes sacred. You protect it. You respect the process, and slowly, what started in silence begins to take shape. You start to see changes, small at first, then undeniable, and while everyone else was watching each other, you were building something real. This kind of silence isn't passive, it's intentional. It's not about hiding, it's about staying rooted. You're not isolating yourself, you're aligning yourself, and the more you do that, the less tempting distractions become. You stop being seduced by shortcuts. You stop explaining your moves to people who aren't on your path. You let your consistency speak. You let your growth answer questions. You let your results say everything that your ego once wanted to scream. We live in a world that pressures you to prove your worth, your hustle, your status. But true focus doesn't need to prove. It just needs to act. It needs to commit. It needs to get up every single day and do what needs to be done, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. Because that's where the edge is built. That's where greatness is shaped, not on the stage, but in the shadows. Think about the most legendary warriors, the greatest minds, the most transformative people in history. They didn't waste time announcing what they would do, they did it, and by the time the world noticed, it was already done. Focus is like that. It doesn't crave attention, it craves evolution, and evolution requires solitude, patience, and a deep respect for silence. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy, it's focus, and when you live this way, when your energy goes toward execution rather than explanation, you move differently, you walk into rooms with quiet confidence. You don't flinch when others doubt you, you don't stop when it gets hard. You keep moving because you're not here to impress, you're here to build, you're here to win, on your terms, in your time. So if you're serious about your focus, stop shouting. Stop broadcasting every step. Let the noise fade. Let your work grow in silence. Let your mind sharpen in the quiet, because the loudest one in the room is rarely the strongest. The strongest one is moving in silence, unshaken, unbothered, and unstoppable.